A German Shepherd visits a dying baby in his final moments. But what he does next shocks everyone watching. In a quiet hospital room, a heartbroken mother is saying goodbye to her only child. The doctors have given up. The machines are slowing. And then this old German Shepherd steps forward, refusing to leave the baby's side. At first, it seems like a loyal goodbye, but within seconds, everything changes. The dog starts pawing at the IV line, growling at the wall, acting like he senses something no one else can see. Nurses panic. The mother begs them to listen. But the hospital wants him out fast. What is this dog trying to tell them? Why is he reacting like this? And when the truth finally comes out, will it be too late to save the baby? Sometimes miracles don't come from doctors. They come on four legs. I'd love to know, where are you watching from? Type it down below. And while you're here, subscribe so you'll always catch the next story. The harsh fluorescent lights of the pediatric intensive care unit cast shadows across Tessa Whitaker's weary face as she sat beside her baby's crib. Her fingers gently traced the clear plastic walls that had become Ian's world for the past 3 months. The steady beep of monitors and the soft whoosh of oxygen created a mechanical lullaby that had replaced the quiet songs she once sang to him. Ian lay still, his tiny chest rising and falling with labored breaths. Tubes and wires seemed to swallow his fragile form, making him look even smaller than his 6 months. A wisp of brown hair, so like his father's, curved across his forehead. Tessa reached through the crib's access window to stroke it, her touch feather-light. "Hey, sweetie," she whispered, forcing warmth into her voice despite the ache in her throat. "Mama's here." The morning shift nurse, Linda, entered with quiet efficiency, checking Etienne's vital signs and adjusting his IV drip. She gave Tessa a gentle pat on the shoulder, a gesture that carried more weight than any words could. "The doctor will be in soon," Linda said softly. Tessa nodded, her stomach nodding. She'd learned to read the subtle shifts in hospital staff's behavior, the careful way they chose their words. Something had changed, and not for the better. When Dr. Marshall arrived, his usual confident stride was absent. He pulled up a chair beside Tessa, and she felt her world tilt before he even spoke. "Mrs. Whitaker," he began, his voice heavy with the weight of what was to come. "We've exhausted our standard protocols, and Ian's condition continues to decline. The infection is resistant to our strongest antibiotics, and his organs are showing signs of stress." Tessa's fingers curled around the fabric of her worn jeans. "There has to be something else we can try." Dr. Marshall's eyes held genuine sorrow. "We've consulted with specialists across the country. At this point, we can only make him comfortable." "And no," the word burst from her lips, sharp and desperate. "He's a fighter. He's made it this far." "I understand how difficult this is," Dr. Marshall said gently. "But we need to discuss comfort care options." Tessa stared at her son, memories flooding her mind. The first time he smiled, his tiny fingers wrapping around hers, the way he used to light up when Kaiser visited. Kaiser, the gentle German Shepherd who had been part of the hospital's therapy program, had formed an instant bond with Ian. The baby would calm at the mere presence of the dog, his vital signs improving during every visit. "Kaiser," she said suddenly, "could we bring Kaiser to see him?" He always responded so well to him. Dr. Marshall's expression softened with sympathy. That would need approval from administration given the current circumstances. The therapy program was discontinued last month due to budget cuts. "Please," Tessa pleaded. "Just one visit. It might help him rally, give him some comfort at least." "I'll speak with Dr. Keene," he promised, though his tone suggested little hope. Hours crawled by as Tessa waited, alternating between whispering to Ian and silently praying. When the click of heels announced Dr. Mallory Keene's arrival, Tessa straightened in her chair, summoning strength she didn't feel. Dr. Keene stood at the foot of Ian's crib, her her tailored suit and perfectly styled hair a stark contrast to Tessa's rumpled appearance. "Mrs. Whitaker, Dr. Marshall informed me of your request." "Please," Tessa began, but Dr. Keene held up a manicured hand. "We're preparing for a major donor event next week. The entire ward needs to maintain strict protocols. Having an animal here, even a former therapy dog, poses unnecessary risks and complications." "Kaiser was here for months without any issues," Tessa argued. "He's trained, certified." "The program was terminated for good reasons," Dr. Keene cut in. "We can't make exceptions, especially not with Beatrice Langley's visit approaching. Her donation will fund critical improvements to this ward." Tessa felt anger rise in her chest, hot and fierce. "My son is dying, and you're worried about a donor event?" "I understand you're upset," Dr. Keene said, her tone professionally distant. "But we have policies in place for the safety of all our patients." "I'm sorry, but the answer is no." As Dr. Keene's heels clicked away down the corridor, Tessa turned back to Ian. His small face was peaceful in sleep, unaware of the battle being fought over his final days. She thought of Kaiser's gentle presence, how the dog would lay his head near Ian's crib, his amber eyes full of understanding, how her baby would reach toward him, making soft, cooing sounds that had become increasingly rare. The mounting medical bills sat heavy in her mind, bills she'd never be able to pay on her diner wages, even with the extra shifts she'd taken. But in this moment, watching her son's labored breathing, money meant nothing. The only currency that mattered was time, and she was running out of it. Linda returned with Ian's evening medications. "I heard about Dr. Keene's decision," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry, Tessa. That dog was magic with the kids." Tessa wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "I just want him to feel some joy, some comfort. Is that too much to ask?" "No, honey, it's not." Linda checked Ian's monitors with practiced ease. "You know, I still have Kaiser's handler's contact information. Owen was heartbroken when they ended the program." Hope flickered in Tessa's chest, small but fierce. She looked up at Linda, seeing understanding in the nurse's tired eyes. "I can't officially give you that information," Linda continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "But if I happen to leave my personal phone unlocked on the break room table while I check on other patients," she gave Tessa a meaningful look. Tessa felt tears spring to her eyes, but these were different from the ones she'd been holding back all day. "Thank you," she whispered. "I'm going on my break now," Linda said at normal volume. "I'll be back in 15 minutes to check on Ian." As Linda's footsteps faded, Tessa looked at her son. His small chest rose and fell, each breath a battle won. She thought of Dr. Keene's cold dismissal, of the donor event that apparently meant more than a dying child's comfort. The exhaustion of the past months, the grief, the anger, it all crystallized into something harder, more determined. "I promise you, baby," she whispered to Ian. "You're gonna see Kaiser again. Mama's gonna make it happen." She stood, her joints stiff from hours of sitting. The break room was just down the hall, and she knew she had exactly 15 minutes. 15 minutes to find the information that might give her son one last moment of joy. 15 minutes to decide whether to fight against the rules that seemed designed to steal even this small comfort from her child. Tessa took one last look at Ian, his tiny form dwarfed by medical equipment. The decision wasn't hard at all for him. She would break any rule, face any consequence. She squared her shoulders and walked purposefully toward the break room, her steps quiet but determined. In her mind, she could already see Kaiser's gentle face, feel the warmth of his presence. She would find a way to bring that comfort back to Ian, even if it meant going against the entire hospital administration. Some battles were worth fighting, no matter the cost, and this was one of them. The break room door stood slightly ajar, and through the gap she could see Linda's phone lying on the table, its screen glowing softly in the dim room. Tessa took a deep breath and pushed the door open, stepping into the quiet space where her act of defiance would begin. The weight of her decision pressed against her chest, but alongside it was a fierce hope, the kind that only comes when you have nothing left to lose, but everything to fight for. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the hospital courtyard as Tessa paced near the stone fountain. Her fingers twisted the small piece of paper with Owen Rohr's number, now smudged from her nervous handling. After their brief phone conversation, he had agreed to meet her here, away from the scrutinizing eyes inside the hospital. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves of the courtyard's maple trees, carrying the faint antiseptic smell that seemed to permeate everything within the hospital's reach. Tessa checked her watch again. She had asked one of the younger nurses to sit with Ian for 30 minutes, promising to bring back coffee in return. "Miss Whitaker?" The voice was deep and steady. Tessa turned to find a tall man approaching, his graying beard neat and trimmed, wearing a navy blue jacket with the Therapy Dog organization's logo. His eyes were kind, the type that had seen both tragedy and hope. "Please call me Tessa," she said, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming, Mr. Rohr." "Owen," he corrected with a gentle smile. "Kaiser's in the car. I thought it best to talk first." They settled on a nearby bench, the fountain's soft splashing providing cover for their conversation. Tessa's hand shook slightly as she pulled out her phone to show him a picture of Ian. "This was taken 3 months ago when Kaiser last visited through the therapy program," she explained, her voice catching. "Look at his face. I hadn't seen him smile like that in weeks." Owen studied the photo, his expression softening at the image of the small boy reaching towards the German shepherd's gentle face. Kaiser remembers him. He always got excited when we were heading to the pediatric ward, but there were certain kids he connected with specially. Ian was one of them. Tessa took a deep breath, gathering her courage. "They've stopped treatment," she said quietly. They're saying it could be days, maybe a week." The words felt like glass in her throat. "I just want him to have one last visit with Kaiser, one moment of joy before—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Owen's hands clasped together, his knuckles whitening slightly. "I heard they suspended the Therapy Dog program for the donor event preparations. Seems wrong to put fundraising ahead of patient care." "Dr. Keene won't make an exception," Tessa explained. "Not even for end-of-life comfort care. I've tried everything, Owen. I'm not asking for much. Just one visit, one chance for my baby to feel that happiness again." A new voice joined their conversation. "Maybe I can help with that." They both turned to see a young nurse in light blue scrubs standing nearby, her curly hair escaping from its ponytail. Her ID badge read Hollis Vega, RN. "I'm sorry for interrupting," Hollis said, stepping closer. "I overheard. And I've been taking care of Ian since he was admitted. What they're doing, it isn't right." Owen stood, his posture straightening with renewed purpose. "You're risking your job by getting involved." Hollis's chin lifted slightly. "Some things are worth the risk. I'm on the night shift tomorrow. The donor event prep team will be gone by then, and Dr. Keene never works past 6 p.m. She glanced around before continuing in a lower voice. "The service entrance by the loading dock is usually empty after 8 o'clock. Security does rounds every hour on the hour." Tessa felt hope rising in her chest. Dangerous, wonderful hope. "You'd help us. I can adjust the round schedule for the floor. Make sure you have a clear path," Hollis said. "But if anyone catches us—" "They won't," Owen assured her. "Kaiser's trained for discreet entry and exit. He was a rescue dog before therapy work. He knows how to move quietly." He turned to Tessa. "Tomorrow night at 8:30. That gives us time to get in between security rounds." Tessa nodded, tears threatening to spill. "I don't know how to thank you both." "Don't thank us yet," Hollis cautioned. "We need to plan this carefully." She pulled out a small notebook and sketched a quick map. "This is the service entrance. I'll prop it open at exactly 8:30. Take the service elevator to the 4th floor, then left down the back hallway. I'll meet you by the supply closet and guide you to Ian's room." Owen studied the map, memorizing the route. Kaiser and I will be ready. We'll park in the far lot away from the cameras. I'll make sure Ian's awake, Tessa added, hope making her voice stronger. He's usually more alert in the evenings. Hollis checked her watch. I need to get back. I'll adjust tomorrow's schedule during my shift tonight. She touched Tessa's arm gently. We'll make this happen. As Hollis hurried back inside, Owen turned to Tessa. Are you sure about this? If we're caught. I'm sure, Tessa said firmly. My son deserves this moment of joy. Whatever consequences come, they're mine to bear. Owen's eyes crinkled with understanding. No, they're ours to bear. We're in this together now. He stood, offering her his card with his personal number. Text me when you're ready tomorrow. Kaiser and I will be waiting. Tessa watched him walk away, the card clutched in her hand like a lifeline. For the first time in weeks, she felt something beyond despair. A spark of defiance, of hope, of love, so fierce it could move mountains, or at least sneak a therapy dog past hospital bureaucracy. She hurried to the coffee cart, remembering her promise to the nurse watching Ian. As she waited in line, she sent a silent prayer of gratitude for Owen and Hollis for their willingness to risk their positions to help a dying child. Tomorrow night couldn't come soon enough. Back in Ian's room, she settled into her usual chair, watching his small chest rise and fall. Kaiser's coming to see you tomorrow, baby, she whispered, touching his tiny hand. Just hold on a little longer. The monitors beat their steady rhythm, and outside the window the sun continued its descent, painting the sky in shades of hope and promise. In less than 24 hours they would attempt their quiet rebellion against the system that had forgotten that sometimes rules needed to bend for love. Tessa felt stronger than she had in weeks. Tomorrow night, she wouldn't be fighting alone. Tomorrow night, they would bring a moment of joy to her son, no matter what it took. She squeezed Ian's hand gently, his peaceful face unaware of the plans being made, the risks being taken, all for one last chance to see him smile. The service entrance door creaked softly as Tessa held it open, her heart pounding against her ribs. Owen guided Kaiser through, the German shepherd's nails clicking quietly against the linoleum floor. In the dim evening light, Kaiser's sable coat seemed to absorb the shadows, making him nearly invisible. Remember, Tessa whispered, we need to be absolutely quiet. Her hands trembled as she checked her phone. 8:32 p.m., right on schedule. Owen nodded, keeping Kaiser close to his side. The dog moved with practiced stealth, his training evident in every careful step. They reached the service elevator without incident. The soft whir of its ancient machinery was the only sound in the empty corridor. 4th floor, Tessa mouthed silently as she pressed the button. The elevator groaned to life, carrying them upward. Each floor passed with agonizing slowness, the digital display counting up. 1, 2, 3. When the doors opened on the 4th floor, Hollis was already waiting by the supply closet, just as promised. She beckoned them forward with urgent gestures. Quick, she whispered. Security just finished their rounds. We have about 15 minutes. They followed her through the maze of corridors, past darkened offices, and quiet treatment rooms. The neonatal intensive care unit lay at the end of the hallway, its entrance marked by double doors and warning signs about sterile protocols. Hollis swiped her badge, and they slipped inside. The NICU was dimly lit, creating a cocoon of soft shadows broken only by the gentle glow of monitors and equipment. The steady beeping of machines created a rhythmic backdrop to their careful footsteps. Ian's room was the third on the left. Tessa's breath caught as they entered. Her baby looked so small in the hospital crib, surrounded by tubes and wires. His tiny chest rose and fell with mechanical precision, aided by the oxygen flowing through his nasal cannula. Hey, sweet boy, Tessa whispered, approaching the crib. Look who came to visit. Owen guided Kaiser closer. But something changed in the dog's demeanor. Instead of his usual calm therapy dog presence, Kaiser's ears pricked forward. His nose twitched and a low whine escaped his throat. "What's wrong?" Tessa asked, worry creeping into her voice. Owen frowned, watching as Kaiser began pacing near Ian's crib. The German Shepherd's behavior grew increasingly agitated. He pawed at the IV line, running into Ian's arm, then turned to stare intently at the wall where various medical supplies were stored. "I've never seen him act like this during a therapy visit," Owen said, his voice tight with concern. Kaiser moved to the formula cart parked near the wall, whining more insistently now. His nose worked overtime, sniffing along the cart's edges and the bags of nutrition hanging from the poles. Tessa's heart clenched. Is he sensing that Ian's going to? She couldn't finish the sentence, tears threatening to spill. Owen shook his head, his expression growing more serious by the second. "No, this isn't grief behavior. This is different. This is how he acted during detection work." "Detection?" Hollis asked, moving closer to examine what had caught Kaiser's attention. Before Owen could respond, the room's door burst open. Dr. Mallory Keene stood in the doorway, her face contorted with fury. Even in the dim light, her perfectly tailored suit and carefully styled hair projected authority and control. "What is the meaning of this?" she hissed, her voice low but sharp as a blade. "A dog in my sterile ward." Tessa stepped forward, placing herself between Dr. Keene and Kaiser. "He's a certified therapy dog. He's here to comfort my son." "Comfort?" Dr. Keene's laugh was cold and brittle. "Your son needs medical care, not some emotional support animal contaminating his environment." "This is completely unacceptable." Kaiser's whining grew louder, more insistent. He moved back to the formula cart, pawing at its base. "Get that animal out of here immediately," Dr. Keene ordered, reaching for her phone. "I'm calling security." "No." Tessa's voice was quiet, but firm. She stood straighter, drawing strength from somewhere deep inside. "My son is dying, Dr. Keene. The least you could do is allow him this small comfort." "This isn't about comfort," Dr. Keene snapped. "This is about maintaining proper protocols and sterile conditions. Do you have any idea what our donors would say if they knew we were allowing animals to roam freely through the NICU? Is that all you care about?" Tessa's voice cracked with emotion. "Your donors? What about the actual children in your care?" Kaiser's behavior grew more frantic. He circled back to Ian's IV line, then to the formula cart, his whines taking on an urgent quality that made Owen's professional instincts spark with recognition. "Ma'am," Owen tried to intervene. "I think there's something." "I don't care what you think," Dr. Keene cut him off. "Remove this dog from my ward immediately, or I'll have security remove all of you and press charges for trespassing." Hollis stepped forward. "Dr. Keene, please. Maybe we should." "And you?" Dr. Keene turned her icy glare on the nurse. "Consider yourself suspended, pending a review of your involvement in this breach of protocol." But Tessa had reached her limit. Months of worry, sleepless nights, and mounting despair crystallized into a moment of pure maternal courage. "No," she said again, louder this time. "Kaiser stays. My son's comfort matters more than your precious appearance of control. How dare you?" Dr. Keene began, but Kaiser's sudden sharp bark cut through her words. The German Shepherd stood rigid now, his attention fixed on the formula cart, his posture screaming alert to anyone who knew what to look for. And Owen knew. He'd seen this behavior hundreds of times during their rescue work. "Something's wrong," he said firmly, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "Kaiser's not mourning. He's warning us. This is how he acts when he detects a threat." The room fell silent except for the steady beeping of monitors and Kaiser's continued whines. For a moment they all stood frozen in a tableau of conflict. Tessa protective beside her son's crib, Owen alert and focused on Kaiser, Hollis watching with growing concern, and Dr. Keene seething with barely contained rage. The administrator's phone was halfway to her ear when Kaiser barked again, the sound echoing off the sterile walls. The message was clear. Something was very wrong in this room. Something that had nothing to do with protocol breaches or donor appearances. And in that moment, as Kaiser's warning hung in the air, the true stakes of their nighttime rebellion began to take shape. This wasn't just about bringing comfort to a dying child anymore. Something more sinister lurked beneath the surface of this sterile ward, and Kaiser's instincts had caught what human eyes had missed. The beeping of Ian's monitors continued their steady rhythm, unaware of the drama unfolding around them. In his crib, the baby slept on, while above him, a mother's love, a dog's warning, and a hospital's secrets collided in the dim light of an NICU room that suddenly felt more like a battlefield than a place of healing. Morning light filtered through the NICU windows, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Tessa sat slumped in her usual chair beside Ian's crib, her eyes heavy from another sleepless night. The events with Kaiser still weighed on her mind, but exhaustion had temporarily dulled the edge of her worry. The ward's usual quiet was shattered by the click of expensive heels against linoleum. Dr. Mallory Keene strode through the double doors, followed by a tall, elegant woman draped in designer clothing. Behind them trailed a small army of photographers and reporters, their equipment bags rustling. "And this is our state-of-the-art neonatal intensive care unit," Dr. Keene announced, her voice carrying the practiced warmth of a tour guide. "Thanks to the generous support of the Langley Foundation, we've been able to provide cutting-edge care to our most vulnerable patients." The elegant woman, who must be Beatrice Langley herself, smiled for the cameras. Her jewelry caught the morning light, sending sparkles dancing across the walls. "It's truly wonderful to see our foundation's work making such a difference," she said, her voice rich with rehearsed sincerity. Tessa watched as orderlies and nurses scurried around, straightening blankets and adjusting equipment. It was like watching stagehands prepare for a theater production. Everything had to look perfect for the cameras. Dr. Keene's eyes landed on Tessa, and her smile tightened. She broke away from the group and approached with quick, purposeful steps. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said in a low voice, "I need you to leave the ward immediately." Tessa blinked. "What? No, I'm not leaving, Anne." "This is not a request." Dr. Keene's voice held steel beneath its professional veneer. "After last night's incident with the dog, you've proven yourself disruptive to hospital order. We can't have any unfortunate displays during this important event." "Unfortunate displays?" Tessa's voice cracked with disbelief. "My son is fighting for his life, and you're worried about how it looks for the cameras?" "Lower your voice," Dr. Keene hissed. "If you continue to be difficult, I'll have no choice but to begin discharge proceedings. Your son's condition has plateaued, and we need the bed for more critical cases." The threat hit Tessa like a physical blow. "You can't do that. He's not stable enough to move." "I can, and I will." Dr. Keene's smile remained fixed in place. "Now please remove yourself from the ward for the next hour. We'll discuss your son's situation afterward." Before Tessa could respond, Hollis appeared at her side. The young nurse's face was carefully neutral, but her eyes held a hint of urgency. "I'll stay with Aeon," Hollis promised. "Why don't you get some coffee? I need to talk to you anyway about his care plan." Something in Hollis's tone made Tessa pause. She nodded slowly, gathering her worn purse and jacket. As she walked past the crowd of reporters, she heard Beatrice Langley's cultured voice. "Our foundation's specialized formula program has revolutionized infant nutrition. The partnership with this hospital represents everything we stand for: excellence, innovation, and above all, care for those most in need." The words followed Tessa down the hallway, each one landing like a bitter pill. She found herself in the small family waiting room, now empty of its usual occupants, Probably cleared out for the photo opportunity, she thought grimly. 15 minutes later, Hollis slipped into the room, closing the door carefully behind her. The nurse's usual cheerful expression was replaced by something more serious. "I have been reviewing Ian's charts," Hollis said without preamble, her voice barely above a whisper. "Something's not adding up." Tessa leaned forward. "What do you mean?" "His decline? It's been rapid, yes, but it's also followed a specific pattern." Hollis pulled out a small notebook, flipping through pages of hastily scribbled notes. "I started tracking it when I noticed the timing. Everything changed about 6 weeks ago." "What happened 6 weeks ago?" "That's when we switched him to the new formula program, the one sponsored by the Langley Foundation." Hollis's eyes darted to the door. "It's supposed to be specially designed for premature infants with complex nutritional needs. The hospital gets it at a massive discount in exchange for exclusive use and promotional rights." Tessa's heart began to pound. "And you think there's a connection?" "I can't be certain," Hollis admitted. "But I've been an NICU nurse for 5 years, and I've never seen this pattern before. The timing is suspicious, especially since other babies on the same formula have shown similar issues, though not as severe as Ian's. Why hasn't anyone said anything?" Hollis's laugh was bitter. "The Langley Foundation practically owns this ward now. The donations funded the new equipment, the research programs, even some of our salaries. Dr. Keene would never risk that relationship, no matter what the data might suggest." Tessa's mind raced back to Kaiser's behavior the night before, his agitation around the formula cart, his desperate attempts to warn them. "Last night," she began slowly, "Kaiser was trying to tell us something about the formula. Dogs can sense things we can't," Hollis agreed. "And Kaiser's not just any dog. He's trained to detect problems." Through the waiting room window, they could see the photo op continuing in the ward. Beatrice Langley stood at a baby's bedside, her manicured hands posed delicately on the rail while cameras flashed. Dr. Keene hovered nearby, directing the scene like a movie producer. "What can we do?" Tessa asked, her voice thick with emotion. "They're not going to listen to us. They've made that clear." "We need proof," Hollis said firmly. "Real scientific evidence that can't be ignored or covered up. I've already started documenting everything, but we need more." She hesitated. "We need to be careful. Dr. Keene won't hesitate to destroy anyone who threatens this arrangement." Tessa watched as more photos were taken, more hands were shaken, more smiles were exchanged. Through it all, her son lay in his crib, growing weaker by the day, while people posed for pictures and talked about excellence and innovation. "I don't care about being careful," she said quietly. "I care about saving my son." Hollis squeezed her hand. "We'll figure this out. But for now, we have to play along. Let them have their photo op. Let them think they're in control." The morning light continued to stream through the windows, illuminating dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. In the NICU, cameras flashed and people smiled. While in a quiet waiting room, 2 women began planning how to expose a truth that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. Ian's monitors beeped steadily in the background, marking time like a metronome. His life hung in the balance, caught between corporate greed and medical ethics, between a mother's love and an administrator's ambition. The truth was there, waiting to be uncovered, in charts and numbers, in patterns and connections, in a therapy dog's warning and a nurse's careful observations. The photo op continued, a carefully choreographed display of philanthropy in progress. But beneath the surface, something darker lurked. Something that had been hidden behind smiles and donations. Something that was slowly poisoning the very children it claimed to help. Owen Rohr couldn't shake the nagging feeling that kept him awake all night. Kaiser's behavior in the NICU hadn't been normal. Not for a therapy dog, and certainly not for Kaiser. 20 years of working with K9 units had taught him to trust a dog's instincts, especially when it came to detecting danger. He made his way through the hospital corridors early that morning, Kaiser padding silently beside him. The German Shepherd's ears were perked forward, alert and focused. They had arrived before the day shift change when the halls were quietest. "Hey," a soft voice called out. Hollis appeared from around the corner, still in her night shift scrubs. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she hadn't slept either. "I was hoping you'd come back." Owen nodded. Kaiser's reaction last night, it wasn't just anxiety or empathy. He was trying to tell us something. "I know," Hollis said, glancing over her shoulder. "Dr. Keene is busy with the donor event in the East Wing. We have maybe 15 minutes before she makes her rounds here." That was all Owen needed to hear. They moved quietly into the NICU, where Tessa sat beside Ian's crib, gently stroking his tiny hand. The baby's breathing seemed more labored than the night before, his chest rising and falling in irregular patterns. "We need to check something," Owen explained to Tessa. He unclipped Kaiser's therapy dog vest, replacing it with his old search harness. The German Shepherd's demeanor changed instantly. This wasn't a comfort visit anymore. This was work. "Show," commanded softly. Kaiser's nose went to work immediately, moving methodically around the room. When he approached the formula cart, his behavior changed dramatically. The dog's muscles tensed, and he began pawing at the ground, the same alert Owen had seen hundreds of times during their rescue work. "That's a strong reaction," Owen murmured, watching Kaiser closely. "He's picking up something specific." Hollis moved closer, her face pale. "These formulas are supposed to be sterile, specially formulated for premature infants with compromised immune systems." Kaiser suddenly turned his attention to the wall near Ian's crib, the same wall he'd been fixated on the night before. His whining grew more intense, and he began scratching at the baseboards. "Two distinct alerts," Owen said, his concern growing. "One at the formula cart, another at this wall. In search and rescue, this pattern usually indicates multiple sources of contamination or danger." Tessa's hands tightened on Aaron's crib rail. "The formula, Hollis just told me about the connection to his decline. But what's wrong with the wall?" Before Owen could respond, a sharp voice cut through the room. "What is that dog doing here again?" Dr. Mallory Keene stood in the doorway, her perfectly tailored suit a stark contrast to their tired appearances. "I thought I made myself clear last night." "Dr. Keene," Owen stepped forward, keeping his voice steady. "I'm a certified canine handler with 15 years of hazard detection experience. Kaiser is indicating serious concerns about—" "This is a medical facility, not a construction site," Keene interrupted. "Your dog's concerns are disrupting our patients and staff. I want you out of this ward immediately." "Ma'am, with all due respect." "No." Keene's voice was sharp as a scalpel. "I will not have some retired firefighter and his pet undermining the reputation of this hospital. We have state-of-the-art equipment, rigorous protocols." A sudden beeping interrupted her tirade. Hollis rushed to Ian's monitors, her movements quick and precise. "His oxygen levels are dropping again," she reported, adjusting various settings. "Heart rate elevated, blood pressure unstable." "This is exactly why we can't have disruptions," Keene snapped. "Security will escort you out if necessary." But Owen stood his ground, Kaiser alert and rigid beside him. "Doctor, I've seen these alerts before in collapsed buildings, in disaster zones. When Kaiser reacts like this, it means there's immediate danger. Multiple sources of contamination that could be affecting." "Enough." Keene's composure cracked slightly. "You have no authority here. This is a prestigious medical facility with millions in funding and cutting-edge protocols. We don't need amateur opinions about—" "His stats are still dropping." Hollis cut in, her voice urgent. "We need to—" "Then do your job, Nurse Vega," Keene snapped. "And you," she turned back to Owen, "get that animal out of my ward before I call security." Kaiser's whining grew more intense, his focus torn between the formula cart and the wall. Owen recognized the urgency in his partner's behavior. This wasn't just concern. This was desperation. Look at him, Owen insisted, gesturing to Kaiser. He's trained to detect biological and chemical hazards. Something in that formula and something behind that wall are triggering his strongest alert responses. You can't ignore. I can, and I will. Keen's voice was ice. This ward operates under my authority, not the hunches of a retired firefighter and his dog. Our protocols are vetted by top medical professionals and generous donors who care more about photo ops than patient safety. Tessa's quiet voice cut through the tension. She stood beside Ian's crib, one hand still gentle on her son's arm, but her eyes blazed with maternal fury. My baby is dying while you worry about donor relationships and hospital reputation. Kaiser's whining reached a new pitch, and he moved back to the wall, scratching more urgently. The sound of his claws against the baseboards echoed in the sudden silence. Get out, Keen enunciated each word carefully. Before I have security remove you and ensure you never set foot in this hospital again. Owen looked at Tessa, then at Hollis, who was still working frantically with Ian's monitors. The nurse's face showed clear conflict, torn between her duty to follow orders and her growing certainty that something was terribly wrong. His vitals aren't stabilizing, Hollis reported, her professional tone strained with worry. We need to consider. What we need, Keen interrupted, is order and compliance with established protocols, not hysteria over a dog's behavior. But Kaiser wouldn't stop. His alerts grew more intense, more desperate. Owen knew this behavior, had seen it in countless disaster scenarios. This wasn't a false alarm. This wasn't anxiety or confusion. This was a trained detection dog trying with everything he had to warn them of real, immediate danger. The tension in the room was palpable. A battle between authority and truth, between protocols and instinct, between power and desperation. In the middle of it all, monitors continued to beep their warning, and a tiny baby fought for every breath while a German shepherd tried to tell them why. The morning sun cast long shadows through the NICU windows, highlighting the stark divide between those who sought truth and those who feared it. Kaiser's alerts continued, a desperate chorus that couldn't be silenced by authority or intimidation. Something was wrong in this ward. Something that threatened the most vulnerable patients, and no amount of administrative pressure could make that truth disappear. Hollis Vega's hands trembled slightly as she slipped into the hospital's lab after her shift. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting harsh shadows across empty workstations. She pulled Ian's latest blood samples from her scrub pocket, carefully labeled but unauthorized. Breaking protocol made her stomach churn, but the memory of Kaiser's desperate alerts and Ian's declining vitals pushed her forward. Just running a few basic panels, she whispered to herself, trying to calm her racing heart. The centrifuge whirred to life, separating the tiny vials of blood while she prepared the testing materials. Years of lab experience guided her movements, precise, methodical, despite her anxiety. Down the hall in the hospital's records room, Owen Rohr sat surrounded by stacks of K9 certification files. His credentials as a former handler had gotten him access, though the clerk's suspicious glance suggested he was pushing his luck. Come on, Kaiser, he muttered, flipping through another folder. Show me what you know, boy. The German shepherd lay at his feet, occasionally lifting his head when Owen spoke his name. Their earlier confrontation with Dr. Keen had left them both on edge. But Owen knew there was more to Kaiser's behavior than simple anxiety. Finally, a thick file caught his eye. Kaiser, dual certification, advanced detection. His heart quickened as he read through the documentation. Not just therapy work, but specialized training in both biological contamination and fire hazard detection. One of only 12 dogs in the state with this rare combination. That's why you were so agitated, Owen said softly, scratching Kaiser's ears. You weren't just sensing Aiden's distress. You were picking up actual dangers. Back in the lab, Hollis stared at her computer screen, double-checking her results. This can't be right, she muttered, running her hands through her curls. The metabolic markers in Ian's blood work showed patterns completely inconsistent with his original diagnosis. Something was severely disrupting his system, but it wasn't what they'd been treating. The lab door opened suddenly, making her jump. Dr. Keene stood in the doorway, her tailored suit pristine even at this late hour. "Nurse Vega," she said coldly. "Unauthorized lab work after hours." "I'm disappointed." Hollis straightened her spine, gathering her courage. "Dr. Keene, these results show serious metabolic irregularities. Ian's system is reacting to something we haven't identified. If we adjust his treatment plan, what we have is a liability concern." Keene cut her off, stepping closer. "Unauthorized tests, speculation about approved treatments, entertaining the paranoid theories of a dog handler." She shook her head. "This stops now. But the evidence could be contaminated, improperly handled, run without proper protocols." Keene's voice was smooth as silk, but her eyes were hard. "Delete the results, Nurse Vega, for your own good." Hollis felt her hands curl into fists. "Are you threatening me?" "I'm protecting this hospital and your career." Keene smiled thinly. "Young nurses who cause problems don't advance. They don't get recommendations. They find themselves working night shifts in struggling clinics. Their potential wasted." The threat hung in the air between them. Hollis looked at her computer screen, then back at Keene. Years of hard work, student loans, her family's pride in her success, all balanced against a sick baby and a dog's desperate warnings. In the records room, Owen was piecing together Kaiser's history. Multiple commendations for detection work, including a case where he'd identified toxic mold behind hospital walls before it could spread to patients. His nose had saved lives before. "Sir," the clerk appeared in the doorway. "We're closing soon." Owen nodded quickly, photographing the relevant pages with his phone. He needed to find Hollis, compare notes. Kaiser's credentials weren't just impressive, they were potentially life-saving. The lab confrontation continued, tension crackling between the two women. "Think carefully about your next move," Keene advised. "One nurse's misguided concern isn't worth destroying everything we've built here." "Everything you've built on what?" Hollis challenged. "Ignored warnings? Covered up problems? How many other patients have shown unexpected reactions to that new formula?" Keene's face hardened. "You're overwrought, Nurse Vega. Take tomorrow off. Clear your head. Remember what's really important for your future." Before Hollis could respond, her phone buzzed. A text from Owen. "Found something crucial. Kaiser's certifications prove he can detect both contamination and fire hazards. His alerts weren't emotional. They were trained responses to real dangers. Meet me in the cafeteria." Hope flared in Hollis's chest. She looked up at Keene, who was watching her expectantly. "You're right," she said carefully. "I should clear my head, think things through." "Wise choice." Keene's smile didn't reach her eyes. "I'll have maintenance dispose of these samples properly." Hollis gathered her things, making sure her phone was angled away from Keene as she typed a quick response. "Coming, bringing proof of metabolic irregularities." Kaiser was right. She left the lab, feeling Keene's gaze boring into her back. In her pocket, she carried a USB drive with copies of Ian's test results. Sometimes protecting patients meant breaking rules, especially when those rules protected the wrong people. The hospital's night shift was beginning. Corridors filling with fresh scrubs and tired faces. Hollis clutched her evidence close, thinking of Ian's struggling breath, Kaiser's desperate alerts, and the rot that seemed to run through the hospital's pristine walls. They had proof now. Real scientific proof that something was terribly wrong. In the cafeteria, Owen waited with Kaiser, spread papers across a corner table. His face lit up when he saw Hollis approach. "You won't believe what I found," he started. "Try me," she replied, pulling out her USB drive. "Because what I found might be even bigger." They bent over their evidence together while Kaiser sat alert beside them. The dog's earlier warnings hadn't been about comfort or companionship. They'd been exactly what his training had prepared him for, detecting real physical dangers that threatened vulnerable lives. Now they just had to figure out how to make someone listen before it was too late. The bright lights of television cameras flooded the pediatric ward as Beatrice Langley swept through the doors. A practiced smile fixed on her perfectly made-up face. Her silk blazer caught the light, matched perfectly to the blue and silver logo of her foundation that decorated the wall behind her. "And here we have our newest partnership," she announced to the trailing reporters, gesturing broadly. "The Langley Foundation's commitment to infant nutrition reaches new heights with our specialized formula program." Dr. Keene hovered at her elbow, beaming with carefully crafted pride. "We're honored to be chosen for this pioneering initiative," she added, guiding the group past the nurse's station. In Ian's room, Tessa sat rigid in her chair, one hand resting on her son's tiny chest. The commotion in the hallway made her stomach knot. Through the window, she could see Owen and Kaiser waiting tensely in the adjacent room, hidden from the main corridor, but ready if needed. Kaiser's ears suddenly pricked forward. His body stiffened, nose turning toward the wall where a large electrical panel was mounted. A low growl rumbled in his chest. Owen recognized the change immediately. This wasn't the contamination alert from before. This was different, more urgent. He watched as Kaiser's hackles rose, the dog's amber eyes fixed intently on the panel. The overhead lights flickered once, twice. A faint buzzing sound became noticeable beneath the chatter of the media tour. "As you can see, our state-of-the-art facility." Dr. Keene's voice carried through the hall, but was interrupted by another flicker of the lights. This time they dimmed noticeably before surging back to full brightness. Kaiser's growl deepened. He took a step toward the panel, then looked back at Owen with clear distress. A sharp, acrid smell began to seep through the air, the unmistakable scent of electrical burning. Owen's firefighter training kicked in instantly. He scanned the room, spotting a maintenance cart left by a worker who'd hurried away when the media arrived. "Ma'am," Owen called out, moving quickly toward Dr. Keene. "We need to—" "Not now," she hissed through her smile, barely turning her head. "We're in the middle of something important." The burning smell grew stronger. Kaiser barked, a sharp, urgent sound that made several reporters jump. "What's that dog doing in here?" Beatrice Langley asked, her polished voice carrying a note of displeasure. "Surely this isn't standard protocol." Dr. Keene's face tightened. "Security will remove him immediately. Please, let me tell you about our success rates." Owen was already moving toward the maintenance cart, pulling out a small diagnostic kit. His hands worked quickly, assembling the infrared thermometer. Behind him, Kaiser's barking grew more insistent. Tessa stood up from Ian's bedside, her heart racing. The smell was unmistakable now, and the lights continued to surge and dim in an irregular pattern. Her instincts screamed at her to grab her baby and run, but Ian was connected to so many machines. Moving him without proper help could be dangerous. "Everyone needs to clear the area," Owen announced firmly, pointing the thermometer at the electrical panel. The reading made his breath catch. The temperature was dangerously high, well into the range that preceded electrical fires. "Mr. Rohr," Dr. Keene snapped, "you are disrupting an important event. Please remove yourself and that animal immediately, or I'll have security." The lights flickered again, longer this time, and a distinct crackling sound came from within the wall. Kaiser's barking reached a fever pitch. "The panel's about to blow," Owen said, his voice cutting through the confusion. "We need to evacuate now." Beatrice Langley's cameraman lowered his equipment, looking nervous. "Should we be worried about?" "Everything is under control," Dr. Keene insisted, but her voice wavered as the burning smell intensified. "This is simply a minor—" "Mama." Ian's weak cry cut through the tension. The machines monitoring him began to beep erratically as the power fluctuations affected their readings. Tessa looked desperately between her son and the smoking panel, paralyzed by the impossible choice. The medical equipment was keeping him alive, but a fire broke out. Owen stepped forward, his voice steady and commanding. "Nurse Vega, get a transport unit in here now. Dr. Keene, call a code red and begin evacuation procedures. Miss Langley, please move your team to the designated emergency exit." Kaiser stationed himself between the electrical panel and Ian's crib, his posture rigid and protective. The dog's warning had been clear from the start. Now there was no denying the danger he'd detected. "This is absolutely unnecessary," Dr. Keene protested. But even she flinched as another crack echoed from the wall, followed by a brief shower of sparks from the panel's seams. The reporters didn't wait for official permission. They began backing away, cameras still rolling as the scene unfolded. Beatrice Langley's perfect smile had vanished, replaced by genuine alarm. "My baby," Tessa whispered, her hands hovering over Ian's fragile form. "Please, someone help me move him safely." Hollis burst through the door with a transport unit, already calling out instructions to other nurses. "We need to transfer him carefully. Everyone else, clear the area now." The overhead lights gave one final violent surge before plunging the ward into darkness. Emergency lights clicked on, casting everything in a dim reddish glow. The acrid smell of burning electricity filled the air completely now, and wisps of smoke began seeping from behind the panel. Kaiser's earlier warning had been right. Deadly right. As staff rushed to implement emergency protocols and evacuate patients, there was no more doubt about the dog's abilities or the validity of his alerts. The question now was whether they could get everyone to safety before the situation got worse. The sound of fire alarms began to wail through the corridors, adding to the chaos. Dr. Keene stood frozen, her carefully orchestrated media event transforming into a potential disaster. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every moment of her hesitation and the swift action of others. "Help me with him," Tessa pleaded, and Owen moved to assist as Hollis began disconnecting Ian from the fixed equipment and transferring him to portable units. The baby's tiny face was scrunched in distress, his breathing labored in the smoke-tinged air. Kaiser remained at his post, alternating between warning growls at the panel and gentle whines toward Ian. The dog's body was tense, ready to act if the danger escalated, but he wouldn't leave until the baby was safely moved. The evacuation was underway, but the crisis was far from over. As sparks continued to fly from the failing electrical system, the true value of Kaiser's warning became clear. Without his alert, they might not have recognized the danger until it was too late. The tendrils of smoke grew thicker, curling through the ward like ghostly fingers. The acrid smell of burning electrical components made everyone's eyes water. Yet, Dr. Keene remained rooted in place, her perfectly manicured hand hovering over the fire alarm without pulling it. "We can't cause a panic," she said, her voice tight. "Miss Langley's foundation announcement." "Are you kidding me?" Tessa's voice cracked with disbelief. She fumbled in her jean pocket and pulled out her phone, hands shaking as she started recording. The camera captured everything: the spreading smoke, Kaiser's protective stance, and most damningly, Dr. Keene's inaction. Owen stepped forward, his firefighter training taking over. "This isn't a debate anymore. That electrical fire is spreading inside the walls. We need to evacuate now." The smoke was getting thicker. Through the haze, Tessa could see Beatrice Langley's expression shift from annoyance to genuine concern as she backed away from the crackling panel. The woman's camera crew had already fled, leaving their equipment behind. "My son can't breathe this." Tessa kept her phone steady, documenting every moment while moving closer to Ian's crib. The baby's monitor showed his oxygen levels dropping, setting off a cascade of urgent beeps. Hollis sprang into action, her hands moving with practiced efficiency over Ian's medical equipment. "We need to disconnect him properly," she said, carefully removing the IV line while keeping the portable oxygen connected. "One wrong move could—" A loud pop from the electrical panel made everyone jump. Sparks showered down and the smoke suddenly thickened. Kaiser barked sharply and moved to the corridor door, using his broad body to keep it propped open as other staff members began rushing past. "Get that dog out of here," Dr. Keene shouted, but her words were drowned out by the sudden blare of fire alarms. Someone else had finally pulled the switch. Owen moved with decisive speed, helping Hollis secure Ian to the portable unit. "Tessa, keep filming," he instructed. "We'll need evidence of what happened here." Tessa's hands trembled as she captured everything. The spreading smoke, Kaiser's protective stance, Dr. Keene's frozen indecision, and Beatrice Langley's hasty retreat. Most importantly, she filmed the formula cart that Kaiser had warned them about earlier, making sure to get clear shots of the labels and batch numbers. The sprinkler system activated with a hiss, sending streams of water down onto the expensive medical equipment. Dr. Keene let out a cry of dismay as her silk blouse was soaked, but she still made no move to help. "Ready," Hollis announced, securing the last portable monitor. "We need to move now." Owen took charge of the transport unit while Hollis monitored Ian's vital signs. Tessa kept pace beside them, her phone still recording, as they navigated the increasingly smoke-filled corridor. Kaiser led the way, his low growls warning others to clear a path. The smoke was thickening rapidly, reducing visibility to just a few feet ahead. The sprinkler system created a disorienting curtain of water, and the sound of multiple alarms made communication difficult. Other hospital staff were evacuating patients, creating a controlled but urgent flow of movement through the corridors. "Stay close to the wall," Owen called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. "The air's clearer down low." Tessa's lungs burned as she tried to keep her breathing shallow. The smoke was worse near the ceiling, creating a dark layer above their heads. Through it all, she kept filming, knowing this was their chance to expose the truth. Ian began to cry, the sound weak but present. Each small sob tore at Tessa's heart, but at least it meant he was still fighting. Hollis kept a close eye on his oxygen levels, making quick adjustments to ensure he was getting enough air. "Left here," Owen directed, guiding them toward the emergency exit. Kaiser had already reached it, standing guard as other evacuees pushed through the doors. The small group moved as one unit, protecting Ian from the chaos around them. Water continued to rain down, soaking them all, but also helping to clear some of the smoke. Tessa's clothes were plastered to her skin, but she barely noticed the discomfort, focused entirely on keeping her phone steady and her son in sight. Through the camera lens, she captured the full scope of the evacuation: nurses guiding patients, doctors coordinating movements, and support staff helping wherever needed. The only ones notably absent were Dr. Keene and Beatrice Langley, who had disappeared in the initial chaos. "Almost there," Hollis encouraged, checking Ian's vitals again. "His stats are holding steady." They reached the emergency exit where Kaiser was still maintaining his post. The dog's fur was soaked, but his eyes remained alert, watching for any threat to his charges. As they approached, he moved aside, letting them pass before falling in behind them as a rear guard. The emergency stairwell was crowded, but orderly, with hospital staff efficiently managing the evacuation. Owen carefully maneuvered the transport unit down the stairs while Hollis and Tessa stayed close, protecting Ian from the jostling crowd. "Keep filming," Owen reminded Tessa gently. "Show how long it's taking us to get out. How many people are affected?" Tessa nodded, making sure to capture the timestamps on the emergency exit signs as they descended. The evidence was building: the delayed response, the endangered patients, the chaos that could have been prevented if Kaiser's warnings had been heeded sooner. The smoke was less dense in the stairwell, but the air was still thick with tension and fear. Every few seconds, Tessa glanced at Ian, reassuring herself that he was still breathing, still fighting. His tiny face was scrunched in discomfort, but his color looked better than it had in days. Kaiser kept pace with them, occasionally pressing against Tessa's legs when the crowd threatened to separate them. His presence was both protective and reassuring, a solid anchor in the midst of the emergency. The descent seemed to take forever, though it was probably only minutes. Each floor they passed brought them closer to safety, but also increased the urgency to get Ian into fresh air. Hollis maintained her professional calm, but Tessa could see the worry in her eyes as she monitored the baby's oxygen levels. 2 more floors, Owen announced, his voice carrying over the sound of footsteps and distant alarms. Emergency services should be waiting outside. Tessa's arms ached from holding her phone up, but she didn't dare stop recording. This was more than just documentation now. It was their chance to expose the truth about everything that had happened in the ward. Kaiser's warnings about the formula, Dr. Keene's negligence, the delayed evacuation. It was all captured in stark detail. The final flight of stairs loomed ahead, and through the emergency exit window, Tessa could see the flashing lights of fire trucks and ambulances. Help was waiting. But first, they had to get Ian safely through the last stretch of their escape. The smoke had found its way even here, seeping under doors and through ventilation systems. But it was thinner now, more of an irritant than a danger. Still, every second counted. They could hear the firefighters entering the building above them, their boots thundering on the metal stairs. Kaiser's ears perked up at the sound of his former colleagues, but he stayed focused on his current mission, guiding his charges towards safety. The dog's training and instincts had already saved him once today. None of them doubted he would do it again if necessary. The emergency exit doors burst open into organized chaos. Red and blue lights painted the pre-dawn parking lot in harsh colors. Fire trucks, ambulances, and police vehicles created a protective semicircle around the hospital entrance. The cool morning air hit Tessa's face like a blessing after the smoke-filled corridors. NICU evacuation, Hollis called out, her professional voice carrying across the lot. Premature infant requiring immediate assistance. 2 paramedics rushed forward with a portable incubator. Owen helped them carefully transfer Ian while Hollis rattled off his vital signs and medical history. Tessa kept filming, her hand shaking but determined to document everything. Blood oxygen improving, 1 paramedic announced, checking the readings. Heart rate stabilizing. Kaiser sat at attention nearby, his wet fur standing up in spikes, eyes never leaving Ian. The morning light revealed the German Shepherd's true colors, rich browns and blacks that had seemed darker in the hospital's fluorescent lighting. We need to get him completely off that formula, Hollis insisted, pulling a folder from beneath her scrubs. I have test results showing severe metabolic irregularities that started after the switch to the Langley Foundation products. The senior paramedic nodded, making notes. We'll start him on standard Premi formula immediately. What about the contamination your dog detected? The wall near his crib, Owen explained, pointing to his own notes. And the formula storage area. Kaiser is certified in detecting both biological and environmental hazards. More emergency vehicles arrived as other patients were evacuated. The parking lot filled with medical personnel, patients, and concerned family members. Through it all, Tessa stayed close to Ian, watching in amazement as his color improved with each passing minute. Look at his cheeks, she whispered, touching the incubator's clear wall. They're pink again. Hollis checked another set of readings and smiled. His body's already responding to being off that formula. Tessa, your son is fighting back. The moment of relief was short-lived. Dr. Mallory Keene emerged from the crowd, her tailored suit now wrinkled and damp, but her expression as controlled as ever. 2 security guards flanked her, along with a man in a hospital legal department blazer. Nurse Vega, Keene's voice cut through the emergency chatter. You are suspended effective immediately for unauthorized testing and breaching confidentiality protocols. Hollis straightened her spine. I have a duty to my patient. You have a duty to this hospital, Keene interrupted. Your badge, please. The security guards stepped forward. Hollis looked at them, then at Ian before slowly removing her ID badge. Her hands were steady, but Tessa could see the muscle jumping in her jaw. Miss Whitaker. Keene turned to Tessa. Your emotional state is clearly affecting your judgment, bringing an animal into a sterile ward, causing panic with unfounded contamination claims. Unfounded? Tessa held up her phone. I have everything on video. The delayed evacuation, Kaiser's warnings, Ian's improvement the minute he got off your donor's formula. A distressed mother's conspiracy theories won't hold up in court. The legal representative spoke up. And that therapy dog is permanently banned from these premises. Owen stepped forward, Kaiser alert at his side. Kaiser is a certified detection K9 with a documented record of... Was a certified K9? Keene corrected. Now he's a liability. And you, Mr. Rohr, are trespassing. Security will escort you out. The guards moved to surround them. Tessa felt the familiar weight of powerlessness settling on her shoulders. But this time it was different. This time she had proof on her phone, in Hollis's tests, in Ian's miraculous improvement. You can't bury this, she said, her voice quiet but firm. My son almost died because of what happened in that ward. Keene's perfect mask cracked slightly. Your son almost died because he was born too early. Everything else is hysteria brought on by grief. Security, please remove them. The guards started to close in, but Kaiser stood his ground. A low rumble in his throat. Not aggressive, but protective. Around them, other evacuated patients and staff were watching, some with phones raised. Dr. Keene, Hollis spoke up, her voice carrying. The test results are already uploaded to the hospital's secure server. Copies have been sent to the State Medical Board and the FDA. You can't delete the truth. Keene's face flushed red. You'll never work in healthcare again. Maybe not, Hollis agreed. But I'll still be able to look at myself in the mirror. The emerging sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as more emergency vehicles arrived. Fire investigators entered the building while hazmat teams prepared to test for contamination. Through it all, Ian slept peacefully in his incubator, his vital signs growing stronger with each passing minute. Tessa watched her son breathe, really breathe, for the first time in weeks. The victory felt hollow, with Hollis suspended and Kaiser banned, but she could see the bigger picture forming. The truth was coming out one piece at a time. We should get Ian to Children's Hospital, the paramedic suggested. They're ready for him, and it's clear he needs a new facility. Tessa nodded, then turned to Hollis. Thank you for everything. Hollis managed a tired smile. Keep fighting. We're not done yet. As the paramedics prepared to transport Ian, Keene retreated into the crowd of administrators and legal staff gathering near the hospital entrance. Her perfect image was cracking, but she wasn't defeated, just regrouping. Kaiser pressed against Tessa's leg, his fur finally starting to dry in the morning sun. She reached down to scratch behind his ears, remembering how this had all started with a simple request to let a therapy dog visit a sick baby. Now here they were, standing in the aftermath of evacuation, with corruption exposed and battle still ahead. Your son's gonna be okay, Owen said quietly. That's what matters most right now. Tessa nodded, watching as the paramedics secured Ian's incubator for transport. Her baby was alive, improving, and finally free from whatever had been slowly poisoning him in that ward. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was a start. The morning sun couldn't chase away the chill that crept into Tessa's bones as she scrolled through her phone. Social media was exploding with perfectly crafted posts from Langley Foundation's public relations team, each one more devastating than the last. Desperate mother endangers NICU ward with unauthorized animal access, read one headline. Langley Foundation stands with St. Michael's Hospital during unfortunate publicity stunt, declared another. Her hands shook as she read comment after comment condemning her actions. People who weren't there, who didn't know the truth, called her reckless and attention-seeking. The carefully controlled narrative painted her as an unstable mother who had put an entire ward of babies at risk. Owen sat beside her in the children's hospital waiting room, his own phone lighting up with notifications. They're moving fast, he said quietly. Professional damage control. Kaiser lay at their feet, his head on his paws but his eyes alert. Even here, in a different hospital, staff kept giving them nervous glances. The Langley Foundation's influence reached far. "How can they twist it like this?" Tessa's voice cracked. "They're making it sound like I deliberately—" "Because they're scared," Owen replied. "Scared people with money and power are dangerous. They'll say anything to protect themselves." A new message popped up on her screen. Her heart stopped. Child Protective Services wanted to meet with her immediately regarding Ian's care. The words emergency assessment and potential endangerment jumped out at her. "No," she whispered. "No, they can't." Owen read over her shoulder, his jaw tightening. "They're playing dirty, using the system against you. They're going to take him." The phone slipped from her numb fingers. "They're going to take my baby?" Kaiser whined softly, pressing against her legs. His warm presence couldn't stop the panic rising in her chest. Everything she'd done to protect Ian was being turned against her. The truth didn't matter against carefully crafted lies and institutional power. "Miss Whitaker." A nurse appeared in the doorway. "CPS is here to speak with you." Two stern-faced women in business suits waited in a small conference room. Their expressions gave nothing away as they opened their folders and began asking questions. Each one felt like a trap. "Can you explain why you brought an unauthorized animal into a sterile environment? Were you aware of the risk to other infants? Has your grief over your son's condition affected your decision-making abilities?" Tessa tried to answer calmly, to explain about Kaiser's detection training, about Hollis's tests, about the electrical panel that could have burst into flames, but they had answers ready for everything. "The dog certification is expired. The nurse was suspended for unauthorized testing. The maintenance department found no serious issues with the panel." Her words felt hollow against their practiced responses. They had an answer for everything, twisting her actions into a pattern of dangerous behavior. Tears burned in her eyes as she realized how thoroughly she'd been outmaneuvered. Outside the conference room, Owen paced the hallway with Kaiser. The German shepherd's ears perked up as a man in coveralls approached them, looking nervously over his shoulder. "You the handler?" the man asked quietly. "The one with the detection dog?" Owen nodded cautiously. The man, his name tag read Mike, pulled a thick folder from under his jacket. "Maintenance logs," he whispered. "Going back 6 months. That panel your dog alerted on, we filed 3 separate reports about overheating and burning smells. All marked, resolved, by administration without any actual repairs." Owen's hands tightened on the documents. "Why are you showing me this?" Mike glanced down the hallway. "Because my buddy Tommy got fired last month for causing panic when he insisted that panel needed immediate replacement. Because every time we file a safety report, it disappears into Dr. Keene's office and nothing gets fixed. Because I got kids of my own and I can't sleep knowing what almost happened in that ward." Owen quickly photographed every page with his phone while Mike kept watch. The logs showed a clear pattern, multiple safety concerns reported and buried, all coinciding with dates of donor events or media visits. "They'll deny it," Mike said. "Say the logs are fake, but the timestamps and signatures are real. And there's more. Maintenance requests for the formula storage unit, temperature control issues, all buried. Kaiser's alert hadn't just been about one panel or one batch of formula. He detected a pattern of negligence that spread through the entire ward, all hidden beneath the gleaming surface of donor plaques and press releases." Owen rushed back to the conference room just as one of the CPS workers was saying, "Given the pattern of concerning behavior." "Excuse me." He knocked firmly on the door. "But I have evidence you need to see." The CPS workers frowned at the interruption, but Owen was already pulling up the photos on his phone. "These are official maintenance logs showing a documented history of safety issues in that ward. Issues that were reported and deliberately ignored by hospital administration." Tessa leaned forward, hope flickering as the CPS workers examined the documents. Their practice neutrality cracked slightly as they scrolled through page after page of damning evidence. "These reports are quite detailed," one worker said carefully, "and they show that Ms. Whitaker's actions potentially prevented a serious disaster." Owen added, "Her son's decline coincided with maintenance issues in the formula storage unit. Kaiser, the dog you're calling a danger, detected both the electrical hazard and the contamination before human instruments could." The second CPS worker closed her folder slowly. "This does present a different perspective on the situation. The hospital endangered those babies," Tessa said, finding her voice again. "Not me, not Kaiser. We exposed the danger." Just then, her phone buzzed with another news alert. Her heart sank as she read the headline. "Langley Foundation announces independent investigation of hospital incident." "Independent?" Owen scoffed. "They're investigating themselves." But the CPS workers were already packing up their files. "We'll need to review all this new information," one said diplomatically. "For now, we're suspending any action regarding custody concerns." It wasn't a victory, but it was a reprieve. Tessa sagged in her chair as they left, the weight of the morning's tension finally hitting her. Through the conference room window, she could see more reporters gathering in the hospital parking lot. "They're not going to stop," she said quietly. "Keene, Langley, they have too much to lose." Owen squeezed her shoulder gently. "But now we have proof. Real proof that Kaiser was right all along. They can't bury maintenance logs as easily as they can dismiss a mother's concerns." Kaiser padded into the room, resting his head on Tessa's lap. She scratched behind his ears, remembering how this had all started with her simple wish to give her dying son comfort. Now they were in the middle of exposing a scandal that reached far beyond one hospital ward. "Thank you," she said to Owen, "for believing me, for helping me fight." He smiled, but his eyes were serious. "The fight's not over. They're going to come at us harder now that we have proof." Through the window, they could see the media circus growing. Langley's PR team was already spinning their independent investigation narrative. But this time, Tessa wasn't alone against the machinery of money and power. She had allies, Owen, Kaiser, Hollis, even quiet heroes like Mike, the maintenance man, who chose truth over comfort. The proof was in her hands now. Kaiser's warnings hadn't been about just one crisis, but a pattern of negligence that had nearly cost lives. The truth was messy and complicated, but it was finally coming to light. The neon sign of Molly's all-night diner buzzed faintly in the late afternoon sun. Inside, Tessa, Owen, and Hollis claimed a worn booth far from the windows, away from prying eyes. Paper coffee cups and half-eaten plates of fries littered the scratched formica table between them. Hollis spread out a stack of medical charts and lab reports, her hands trembling slightly from too much caffeine and too little sleep. "Look at these dates," she said, pointing to a series of numbers. Ian's decline started exactly 2 weeks after the hospital switched to Langley Foundation formula. And he wasn't the only one. Tessa leaned forward, pushing aside her untouched slice of pie. "Other babies got sick too?" 3 others showed similar symptoms, Hollis confirmed, her voice low. But their cases were classified differently. Respiratory distress, failure to thrive. The common thread was hidden in separate charts. Owen pulled out his phone, scrolling through the maintenance logs he'd photographed. The formula storage unit started having temperature control issues right around then, too. "See?" He held up the screen showing a work order dated 3 months ago. But instead of fixing it, he drew a finger across his throat. "Buried it," Tessa finished. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup, seeking warmth. But why? Why would they ignore something so dangerous? Hollis pulled out another document, a glossy hospital newsletter. On the front page, Beatrice Langley smiled beside an oversized check, Dr. Keene beaming at her side. The headline read, "Langley Foundation pledges $20 million for new NICU wing." The donation came with strings, Hollis explained. Exclusive contracts for medical supplies, formula, equipment, all from Langley-owned companies. The hospital board was so excited about the money, they didn't look too closely at the fine print. Or they didn't want to, Owen added grimly. Tessa felt sick. They chose money over babies' lives. "I sent samples to an independent lab this morning," Hollis said. "A friend from nursing school works there. She'll rush the tests. Keep it quiet until we have results." Owen nodded approvingly. "Smart. We need solid proof before they can spin this their way." Tessa pulled out her own phone, opening the video she'd recorded during the evacuation. The footage was shaky but clear. Smoke filling the corridor. Kaiser's warning barks. Keene trying to stop them from leaving. The chaos as other parents realized the danger. She'd captured it all. "I want to post this," she said firmly. "People need to see what really happened." Hollis bit her lip. "The hospital will try to shut it down. Claim privacy violations. Threaten lawsuits. Let them." Tessa's voice was steel. "I'll blur the other patients' faces, but I'm done being quiet. They nearly killed my son. How many other babies are at risk right now?" Owen squeezed her hand. "We'll help you edit it. Make it bulletproof." For the next hour, they worked together. Hollis provided medical context, explaining terms in simple language people could understand. Owen helped sequence the events, showing how Kaiser's alerts connected to the maintenance issues. Tessa narrated, her voice steady as she named names and detailed the pattern of neglect. "Dr. Mallory Keene knew about the safety concerns," she said into the camera. "She chose to hide them. Beatrice Langley's foundation provided contaminated formula and faulty equipment. When the truth started coming out, they tried to blame a mother and a therapy dog for disrupting their perfect image." She ended with a direct look at the lens. "I'm speaking out because every parent deserves to know what's happening behind those donor plaques and press releases. My son almost died because profit meant more than safety. How many other hospitals has this happened in? How many families don't know the real reason their babies got sick?" When she finally hit post, her hands were shaking. Within minutes, the first shares and comments started appearing. "It's out there," she whispered. "No taking it back now." Hollis checked her phone. "My friend at the lab says she'll have preliminary results by morning, if they confirm what we suspect." "When they confirm it," Owen corrected gently, "Kaiser doesn't make mistakes about these things." The diner's fluorescent lights flickered, reminding them of the hospital's faulty wiring. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Tessa watched her video's share count climbing, each number representing someone else learning the truth. "Thank you," she said to her friends. "Both of you for risking everything to help us." Hollis smiled tiredly. "Some things matter more than keeping your head down. I became a nurse to help people, not to watch them suffer because some millionaire wants better publicity." Owen nodded. "Kaiser taught me that sometimes the most important thing you can do is trust your instincts and stand your ground, even when everyone else says you're wrong." Tessa's phone buzzed with another notification. The video was spreading faster now, picking up momentum as people shared their own stories of medical negligence and corporate cover-ups in the comments. "We should get some rest," Hollis suggested. "Tomorrow's going to be intense once the hospital sees this." They gathered their evidence, tucking papers and charts safely away. The truth was out there now, spreading through social media feeds and text messages, impossible to contain or control. As they left the diner, the neon sign hummed above them like a promise. Light pushing back darkness, truth emerging from shadow. They had chosen their moment and their method. Now all they could do was stand firm as the storm broke around them. Tessa checked her phone one last time. The video had over 1,000 shares already. No matter what happened next, they had succeeded in one crucial thing. People were finally paying attention. The comfortable silence protecting Keene and Langley's negligence had been broken. The setting sun cast long shadows across the parking lot as they parted ways, each heading home to prepare for whatever the morning would bring. Their evidence was solid. Their story was public. And most importantly, they were no longer fighting alone. The numbers climbed through the night. By dawn, Tessa's video had reached over 100,000 views. She watched the counter tick up on her phone screen, curled in the hospital room's worn armchair beside Ian's crib. Her son slept peacefully now, his breathing steady for the first time in weeks. The morning news vans arrived before sunrise, their satellite dishes sprouted like metal flowers in the parking lot. Reporters standing in the pre-dawn chill with microphones ready. Through the window, Tessa could see their lights casting long shadows across the pavement. Her phone buzzed. Another message from Owen. Just sent everything to Marcus Chen at the Patient Safety Alliance, his text read. And Sarah Rodriguez at the Tribune. She's the one who broke the story about pharmaceutical kickbacks last year. They're both looking into it. Tessa typed back a quick thank you, then watched as more notifications flooded her screen. Comments, shares, messages from other parents sharing similar stories. The truth was spreading like wildfire, and no amount of corporate spin could contain it. Now, the hospital corridor erupted with activity around 7 o'clock. Phones rang constantly at the nurses' station. Staff members whispered in clusters, shooting furtive glances toward Ian's room. Tessa heard fragments of their conversations. Board meeting. Investigation. Liability. Dr. Mallory Keene arrived at 8:15, her usual pristine appearance showing signs of strain. Her tailored suit was slightly wrinkled, her perfectly maintained hair looking less than perfect. She marched straight to the administrative offices, trailed by 3 men in expensive suits who had to be hospital lawyers. An hour later, a young nurse slipped into Ian's room. "They're trying to build a case against you," she whispered, checking over her shoulder. "Dr. Keene is saying you tampered with the equipment, caused the electrical issues yourself for attention. She's got security footage of you near the panel before it sparked." Tessa's heart clenched, but she forced herself to stay calm. "I was checking on my son, that's all, and the maintenance logs Owen found prove those problems existed long before I ever set foot near that panel." The nurse nodded. "Most of us are on your side. We've seen too many things swept under the rug." By 10 o'clock, the hospital's PR team had released an official statement. Tessa read it on her phone, her lip curling at the carefully crafted corporate language. "We take all safety concerns seriously, conducting a thorough internal review, committed to patient well-being, unfortunate misunderstanding. Owen arrived around 11, carrying 2 cups of coffee and a determined expression. Sarah Rodriguez is running the story in tomorrow's paper," he said, handing Tessa one of the cups. "Front page. She's got quotes from 3 former employees about similar incidents that were covered up." "Thank you," Tessa said, wrapping her hands around the warm cup. "For everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you." He smiled, the corners of his eyes crinkling. "Kaiser's the real hero. He knew something was wrong before any of us." As if on cue, shouting erupted in the corridor. Beatrice Langley had arrived, her expensive heels clicking against the linoleum like angry punctuation marks. She swept past Ian's room, trailing assistants and radiating fury. "Where is she?" Langley's voice carried clearly through the walls. "Where is Mallory Keene?" Tessa and Owen exchanged glances. Through the partially open door, they could see the drama unfolding at the nurse's station. Keene emerged from her office, trying to maintain her usual air of authority. "Mrs. Langley, perhaps we should discuss this in private." "Private?" Langley's laugh was sharp as broken glass. "Like you privately ignored maintenance warnings? Privately covered up contamination reports? My foundation's reputation is in shreds because you couldn't handle basic crisis management. I was protecting the hospital's interests. You were protecting yourself. Langley jabbed a manicured finger at Keene's chest. Look at this mess. National media camping outside, social media exploding, my board members calling for investigations. All because you couldn't control one mother and a therapy dog. Their voices faded as they moved toward the administrative wing, but the damage was done. Staff members who had witnessed the confrontation whispered among themselves, no longer bothering to hide their conversations. Owen's phone buzzed. He checked it, then showed Tessa the screen. It was an email from the Patient Safety Alliance confirming they were launching an official inquiry. The dominoes are starting to fall, he said quietly. Tessa nodded, watching through the window as another news van pulled into the parking lot. I just hope it's enough that something actually changes this time. Throughout the afternoon, the hospital seemed to hold its breath. Doctors and nurses went about their duties with unusual quietness, as if waiting for the next explosion. Security guards stationed themselves at every entrance, turning away reporters who tried to slip inside. Around 3 o'clock, Hala stopped by on her break. Despite being officially suspended, she still wore her scrubs. Board meeting's been going for hours, she reported. Word is they're reviewing every complaint Keene dismissed over the past year. Good, Tessa said firmly. They need to see the whole pattern. Some of the other nurses are coming forward now, Hollis added, talking about times they've reported problems and were ignored or threatened into silence. Once the first person speaks up, others find their courage. Owen finished. The day wore on. More news vans arrived. Tessa's video passed 500,000 views. Online forums filled with discussions about hospital accountability and corporate influence in healthcare. Hashtags trended. Hashtag justice for Ian. Hashtag hospital corruption. Hashtag patients over profits. As evening approached, they heard Keene's office door slam through the window. They watched her stride toward her car, her face set in rigid lines. She didn't look left or right, didn't acknowledge the reporters shouting questions. The perfect composure she'd maintained for so long was cracking. Langley had left hours earlier, her face thunderous, already on her phone with what sounded like crisis management teams. Her foundation's website had gone mysteriously offline for maintenance. A different kind of quiet settled over the hospital as night fell. Not the fearful silence of before, but something more like anticipation. Change was coming. The long-maintained walls of authority and denial were beginning to crumble. Tessa sat beside Ian's crib, holding his tiny hand. His color was better now, his breathing stronger. On her phone, the view counter kept climbing, each number representing another person learning the truth, another witness to what happened here. Owen pulled up a chair beside her. Neither of them spoke for a while, watching the lights of news vans reflect off the hospital windows like stars. Finally, Tessa broke the silence. Do you think it will make a difference? Really change anything? Owen considered this, then nodded slowly. Truth has a way of demanding attention once it's out there, especially when it's truth that affects people's children. No parent can ignore that. Through the window, they could see reporters setting up for their evening broadcasts. Their cameras pointed at the hospital's imposing facade. But the building didn't look quite so intimidating anymore. Its authority had been challenged, its secrets exposed to light. In his crib, Ian stirred and made a soft sound. Tessa reached for him, and as she held her son, she felt the shift in the air. Power moving, truth rising, justice taking its first careful steps forward. The hospital boardroom felt like a pressure cooker. Dark wood panels absorbed the morning light, making the space feel smaller than it was. Around the long table, board members shifted in their leather chairs, papers rustling as they reviewed the documents in front of them. Owen stood at the front of the room, his normally calm demeanor radiating quiet authority. Behind him, a projection screen displayed maintenance logs, timestamps clearly visible. The facility engineer, Mike Torres, sat nervously at one end of the table, his work-worn hands clasped tightly together. As you can see, Owen said, pointing to specific dates, The electrical panel issues were reported 6 separate times over the past 8 months. Each report was marked as reviewed by Dr. Keene, but no action was taken. Dr. Mallory Keene sat rigid in her chair, her perfect posture a stark contrast to her pale face. "Those were minor issues," she interrupted. "Routine maintenance concerns that nearly caused a fire in a neonatal ward," Owen finished firmly. He clicked to the next slide. Hollis's lab results. "And this shows the metabolic irregularities in multiple infants who received the Langley Foundation formula. The pattern is clear." The board chairman, Dr. Harrison, leaned forward. "Dr. Keene, did you receive these test results from Nurse Vega?" "I did." Keene's voice was clipped. "But they were preliminary, inconclusive." "They were accurate," came a new voice. Heads turned as Beatrice Langley entered the room, followed by 2 men in suits. Her usual camera-ready smile was nowhere to be seen. "Our internal review has confirmed contamination in 3 recent batches, a quality control failure that should have been caught and reported immediately." The room erupted in murmurs. Keene's face went from pale to ashen. "Mrs. Langley, I was protecting our partnership." "You were protecting yourself," Langley snapped. "And you've damaged both our institutions in the process." She turned to the board. "The Langley Foundation is suspending all formula programs pending a full investigation. We're also withdrawing our donation offer." A sudden wail of sirens cut through the tension. Several people jumped. "That's the new safety drill protocol," Owen explained. "Implemented this morning after the fire marshal's review." Dr. Harrison nodded gravely. "Dr. Keene, do you have anything else to add in your defense?" She opened her mouth, then closed it again as the video began playing on the screen. Tessa's phone footage showing the chaos in the NICU, smoke filling the corridors, while Keene tried to prevent the alarm from being pulled. The board chairman sighed heavily. "I think we've seen enough. Dr. Keene, please surrender your credentials to security. They'll escort you to clear out your office." 2 security officers appeared in the doorway, as if on cue. Keene stood slowly, her hands shaking slightly as she unpinned her ID badge. The click of her heels echoed in the silent room as she walked out, flanked by the guards. "Mr. Rohr," Dr. Harrison said, "please extend our deepest apologies to Miss Whitaker. The board will be implementing immediate policy changes regarding both safety protocols and patient advocacy." Mike Torres cleared his throat. "Does this mean I can finally get that electrical panel properly replaced?" A few nervous chuckles broke the tension. "Yes, Mr. Torres," the chairman assured him. "All delayed maintenance will be addressed immediately." Outside the boardroom, staff members gathered in small clusters, watching as Keene was led to her office. The news spread quickly through the hospital halls. Justice, delayed but not denied, had finally arrived. In the NICU, Tessa held Ann close, as Owen told her what happened. Through the window, they could see maintenance crews already at work on the electrical panel. While in the treatment room, nurses were removing all Langley Foundation products from the supply carts. The sirens of another safety drill echoed through the corridors, but this time no one tried to silence them. Instead, staff moved efficiently through the new protocols, proof that change was already taking hold. The institution that had seemed so immovable just days ago was transforming. Accountability was replacing silence. Safety was taking priority over image. And in his mother's arms, Ian slept peacefully, his breathing strong and steady in the clean, monitored air of a hospital, finally putting patients first. Sunlight streamed through the NICU window, casting a warm glow across Ian's crib. 6 weeks had passed since the day Kaiser's warning had saved not just one life, but transformed an entire hospital. The oxygen tubes were gone now, and healthy pink had replaced the worrying pallor in the baby's cheeks. Kaiser lay quietly beside the crib, his amber eyes fixed on Ihan with gentle watchfulness. The German Shepherd's presence in the ward was no longer questioned. His special visitor's badge hung proudly from his therapy vest, marking him as the hero everyone now knew him to be. Tessa sat in her usual chair, but the exhaustion that had once seemed permanent had lifted from her shoulders. She watched as Anne's tiny fingers reached toward Kaiser, a faint smile playing across her baby's face. "He's getting stronger every day," Owen said softly from where he stood behind her chair. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, a gesture that had become natural over these weeks of recovery and renewal. "Thanks to Kaiser," Tessa replied, reaching up to cover Owen's hand with her own. "Thanks to both of you." The door opened quietly as Dr. Harrison entered, followed by several board members. "Miss Whitaker," he said warmly, "we have a proposal for you." Tessa straightened in her chair, but didn't move away from Owen's steadying presence. "We're restructuring our family advisory board," Dr. Harrison continued, "making it a paid position with real authority. We need voices like yours, parents who aren't afraid to speak up when they see something wrong. Would you consider joining us?" Tears welled in Tessa's eyes as she nodded. "I would be honored," she managed to say. "Excellent." Dr. Harrison smiled. "And of course, Kaiser will always have visiting privileges. His story has already changed how hospitals across the country view therapy and detection animals." It was true. The media coverage had spread far beyond their small town. Kaiser's dual role, therapy dog turned life-saving detector, had captured hearts and opened minds. Hospitals were revising their policies, and Kaiser had become the face of a new movement integrating animal-assisted therapy with safety protocols. Owen squeezed Tessa's shoulder gently. His visits had become daily occurrences, their shared experience building a connection neither had expected. They moved together now with the easy comfort of two people who had faced a crisis side by side and emerged stronger. "Look," Tessa whispered suddenly. Everyone turned to see Emin reaching out again, this time managing to grasp one of Kaiser's ears. The dog remained perfectly still, tail wagging softly as the baby explored with curious fingers. Dr. Harrison and the board members quietly excused themselves, leaving the four of them together. Tessa, Owen, Kaiser, and the baby whose life had changed everything. Through the window, they could see the hospital's new safety protocols in action. Staff moving with purpose and confidence. The culture of silence had been replaced by one of vigilance and care. Kaiser shifted slightly, pressing his warm body against the crib rails as Anne drifted toward sleep. His role had evolved from offering comfort in what was meant to be a final goodbye to becoming the guardian whose instincts had saved a life and exposed the truth. In the quiet room, his presence remained a reminder that sometimes the most powerful changes come from the simple act of paying attention to those who cannot speak for themselves. Thanks for watching. If any part of this story lingered with you, consider subscribing. I'll be here again tomorrow, sharing another tale that speaks to the soul.